The magnificent castle stands outside with its tall tower and beautiful design. The place looks like a royal palace. The guests gather inside the grand hall and admire the beautiful stained glass windows. Everyone enjoys the elegant celebration. A performer suddenly appears before the guests and creates a strange scene. The situation quickly turns into chaos. The guests panic and run away as the strange disturbance spreads through the hall. A man cannot believe what is happening and cries out in disbelief. He falls forward in shock after seeing the terrifying sight. The guests panic after seeing what happened and fear that General Hugel has been punched. They struggle to understand the terrible scene unfolding before them. Sage Cain Redrum stands in the middle of the chaos with a troubled expression. They believes that Cain has completely lost his mind and cannot understand why such a terrible situation has happened. General Hugel looks exhausted and angry after being attacked. He struggles to deal with the situation and curses Cain for going too far. Hugel is furious at Cain's insults. He demands to know whether Cain even knows who he is. General Hugel reminds Cain that he is an executive of the royal army and a member of a ducal house. He also questions whether Cain realizes that insulting him is the same as insulting the nation. Cain mocks Hugel by calling him unfit for a military man. He questions whether sitting at a desk all day has made Hugel's body dull and weak. Hugel finally loses his temper and rushes toward Cain Redrum. He calls Cain an insolent fool and declares that Cain Redrum will regret everything he has done. Cain flicks Hugel's forehead with a finger and sends Hugel flying backward from the force of the attack. Cain calls him attack too slow and shows that Hugel cannot match his speed. The guests realize that this is Cain's true strength. They understand that even General Hugel cannot stand against Cain. Cain decides to let Hugel off this time. Hugel tries to protest, but Cain remains in control of the situation. He becomes furious and warns Hugel not to say something like that again. He makes it clear that Hugel will not get off so easily next time. Hugel is furious after being defeated by Cain. He warns Cain not to think the fight is over and declares that causing such a disturbance will bring severe punishment. Hugel struggles after being attacked as Cain declares that his medal will be taken away soon. Cain becomes enraged and shouts at Cain to shut up while angrily rejecting the threat. He tells Careful to listen closely and explains that defeating the Demon King was not for some meaningless medal. He makes it clear that the medal is not what he truly wants. As Hugel remains behind him, Cain reveals that there is another reason for his actions. Cain reveals what he truly wants. He desires this country and its money, and he also wants Princess Lilia. His words show that his goals are far greater than a simple medal. The people in the hall gather and stare at Cain in shock. Everyone watches him as the truth behind his ambition becomes clear. The guests are disgusted by Cain and call him trash for his selfish ambition. Their harsh words make it clear that they see Cain as nothing more than a worthless sage. Cain suddenly appears before the crowd and leaves everyone shocked by his presence. The grand castle stands proudly as the guests realize that Cain truly intends to take the country and its wealth for himself. After that, a young girl travels through the forest while carrying a heavy backpack. She walks along the mountain path and struggles to keep moving as the long journey leaves her exhausted. The girl finally reaches a large house after her difficult journey. The girl quickly hurries toward the entrance because she has to get inside in a hurry. Her tired body can barely keep up as she rushes to the door and prepares to enter. The girl becomes nervous when Cain approaches her again. She reacts with fear and begs Cain not to kill her as she tries to escape the sudden encounter. He notices the girl and realizes that she has come again after traveling from the town at the base every single day. He decides to give her a reward for her effort today. The girl runs away in panic while Cain watches in confusion. She screams for help and desperately begs Cain not to kill her as the situation quickly turns into chaos. The newspaper lies open in his hands while the girl has already fled after the chaotic encounter. Cain picks up the newspaper and begins reading it with interest. He reads the newspaper and discovers the shocking headlines accusing the trash sage of plotting national treason. The articles reveal numerous crimes committed by the trash sage and question where Cain went after being exiled from the capital. He laughs loudly after reading the newspaper. He finds the situation absurd and cannot believe that such accusations have been written about him. Cain suddenly loses his balance and falls onto the floor with the newspaper beneath him. He struggles to understand how everything has ended up like this. Kudalir Gerstein believes the entire situation is Kane's own fault. She holds Kane responsible for everything that has happened. She explains that General Hugel punched him after Kane demanded the country and its money along with Princess herself. Kane insists that the entire situation was misunderstood and points out that being exiled was actually fortunate. Kane recalls the words written in the newspaper about peace for the country and funding for orphans. He also remembers the claim that Kane offered a vacation for Princess Lilia after all her efforts during the Demon King's victims. Kudalir insists that none of those words came from him and wonders what was actually said. She warns Kane that his words are easily misunderstood and tells him to be more careful even if Kane believes his actions are justified. Cordelia reminds Kane that it is not normal for a hero who defeated the Demon King to be treated like a traitor. Kane explains that every time he tries to talk to people he gets misunderstood. He recalls being mistaken for a thief when carrying his bag and being mistaken for an attacker when catching a pickpocket. Kane feels frustrated because people keep misunderstanding him no matter what he does. He admits that even he cannot defend himself anymore. In the end, the king himself exiled Kane and left him with no way to prove his true intentions. Kane had no choice but to punch the damn general after the general asked whether he wanted to buy children as slaves. Such a question was unacceptable, and Kane considered the punch a natural response to something so cruel. Cordelia made it clear that the general was a fool for trying to exploit others. Children were especially precious and were among the greatest treasures in the world. Treating them as something to be exploited was something Kane could not accept. The conversation then turned toward how the general had approached Kane in the first place. He tried to remember the exact question he had asked Kane. She had simply asked whether Kane liked children. The innocent question had received an unexpectedly enthusiastic response. Kane proudly made it clear that children were something he truly loved. His expression and confident smile showed how certain he was about his answer. Cordelia immediately wondered why Kane had answered so definitely. Cordelia told Kane to look at himself in a mirror. His expression made him look like a complete pervert. Kane was forced to consider how his face appeared to others. Kane realized that his expression really did make him look suspicious. He remembered that even when he had tried to give sweets to children as a delivery gift, they had run away from him. Cordelia told Kane not to be so down. She had good news for him today and wanted to lift his spirits. Cordelia became interested when Kane mentioned good news. Cordelia explained that thanks to the general slipping up this time, the group had managed to wipe out a human trafficking organization. Her success meant that the dangerous operation had finally been dealt with, and the people involved had been brought down. Kane was surprised by the news and could only react with genuine disbelief at how well things had turned out. Cordelia continued with the good news and revealed that the entire guild had been mobilized. All of the slaves had been rescued, and the operation had succeeded in saving everyone who had been caught by the trafficking organization. Kane apologized for leaving her and explained that it was nothing personal. Cordelia playfully added that perhaps this time Kane would finally sign a marriage certificate for her. She seemed delighted by the idea and continued to press the matter with an affectionate enthusiasm. Kane reacted to the suggestion by making it clear that her taste was still terrible. However, Cordelia warned that they still did not have proof linking the organization to the general. She urged Kane to remain careful because the general had been acting suspiciously lately. Kane was told that there was no need to be so cautious over a single soldier since the organization had already been caught. Cordelia explained that someone seemed to be acting as the general's personal spy. Any information connected to the general was being erased by that person before it could be traced. Kane then made his own resolve clear as the guild director. He would definitely catch the person behind the suspicious activity and uncover the truth. He understood the situation and agreed to be careful until then. He accepted the warning and thanked Cordelia for telling him. Princess Lilia was also suspected of assisting with the investigation against the general. Cordelia considered having the princess on their side a major advantage. With Princess Lilia as an ally, it was like having 100 allies supporting their efforts. Cordelia remembered how furious Princess Lilia had been the other day. Her anger had become so intense that she crushed a stone pillar with her bare hand. The incident showed just how dangerous her temper could become. Kane apologized for contacting Cordelia at such a time and promised to contact her later. Cordelia accepted the apology and told Kane that she would be waiting whenever he was ready. Kane suddenly noticed something unusual when he entered the room. He stopped and wondered what was happening as the unexpected sight caught his attention. A group of heavily armed soldiers stood behind General as he confronted Kane. The general looked serious as he approached Kane with his troops gathered behind him. His presence made it clear that the meeting was not a casual visit. General looked directly at Kane and demanded confirmation that he was Kane Redrum. He then questioned who the general was and why he had come to find him. Kane noticed the crest on the soldiers' uniforms and recognized them as Crest Kingdom soldiers. Their presence made the situation more serious as he realized that the men had come under official authority. Kane then noticed the large box being transported behind the soldiers. The box was sealed with magic script and secured with silver chains and a magic lock. No matter how it looked, the contents were clearly considered dangerous. The man explained that the soldiers served directly under General Hugel. They had come to deliver an order to Kane on his authority. The unexpected visit made it clear that Kane was about to become involved in another serious matter. Kane questioned what kind of order General Hugel had brought for him. He could not understand what that bastard wanted from him, and clearly had no interest in accepting trouble without an explanation. The soldiers immediately moved to silence Kane and warned him not to engage with the general. The harsh insult against Kane only made the situation more hostile as the soldiers tried to keep the confrontation under control. The soldiers were considered devoted to the general and were not supposed to know about his crimes. Kane reminded them that he was not part of the military. There was no reason for him to involve himself in military affairs, and the situation had nothing to do with his position. Kane was then reminded that regardless of who he was obligated to cooperate because the matter involved national secrecy. The order left little room for refusal. Kane regarded the demand as a rather one-sided order. Kane asked whether the matter concerned the large sealed box that had been brought with the soldiers. General confirmed that the box was indeed the matter entrusted to Kane. Kane wondered what could possibly be inside. He considered whether it contained a cursed item or perhaps a violent monster. General ordered the soldiers to open the box. He told Kane that the truth would become clear once the container was opened and its contents were revealed. As the chains were removed, Kane suddenly found himself caught off guard by what happened. The heavy box crashed onto the ground with tremendous force. The impact shook the area as the sealed container finally came to rest after being opened. Inside the box, a young girl was sitting alone on the ground. She had drawn her knees close to her body and rested her head against her arms. The girl struggled weakly after being released from the sealed box. She appeared exhausted and frightened as she tried to recover from the harsh conditions inside the container. Kane and the soldiers could only watch as the situation became more serious. Kane suddenly confronted General with anger. He demanded to know what the meaning of this was and questioned whether the army had started dealing in slaves. General immediately rejected the accusation and ordered Kane not to be ridiculous. He insisted that the girl was far worse than a mere slave. The little girl was revealed to be a cursed child who carried the Demon King's blood within her. Her frail appearance concealed a terrifying truth that completely changed the meaning of her existence. Kane was stunned by the revelation. The truth was far beyond anything he had expected and left him unable to hide his shock. The explanation continued with the story of the Demon King. About 10 years ago, a great calamity had suddenly appeared across the continent. That disaster had begun with the rise of the Demon King and had thrown the entire land into chaos. The Demon King possessed immense magical power and destroyed everything in its path. Countless lives were lost without regard for borders or race. Just as the world seemed doomed, Sage Kane defeated the Demon King after 3 days and nights of battle. His victory finally brought the endless disaster to an end and restored hope to the people. Kane was shocked by the mention of the Demon King's daughter. General explained that the Demon King's remains had been carefully analyzed. Those magical waves were traced to a single source. The investigation eventually led them to the Demon King's daughter and revealed her existence. Kane could not believe that the frightened girl before him was the child they had been talking about. General ordered Kane to let go of him at once. He insisted that everything had already been explained and showed growing irritation at Kane's reaction. He explained that the girl had been secured in complete secrecy. Kane questioned how a child could possibly be so defiant. General insisted that the girl was so defiant that even the army had been unable to handle her. He then ordered the soldiers to prove his words by telling them to do it. A soldier drew a sword and raised it toward the helpless girl. Kane immediately realized what was about to happen while the girl remained frozen in fear. The frightened girl looked toward the approaching blade without understanding what awaited her. Fear filled her expression as the soldier closed the distance with the weapon still aimed at her. The sword flashed through the air and struck toward the girl without hesitation. Kane reached out in panic and desperately shouted for the attack to stop. The girl trembled in confusion as a quiet cry escaped her lips. The instant the blade reached the girl, a violent burst of magical power erupted from her body. The overwhelming force exploded in every direction and swallowed the cart in a deafening shockwave. Even the soldier who had attacked her was thrown back by the sudden blast. General explained that the girl possessed immense magical power equal to the Demon King. Whenever she resisted, the soldiers were the ones who suffered injuries. The repeated attacks had made it impossible for them to control her safely. Kane quietly realized that the girl's magical power was definitely similar to the Demon King's. Even so, he admitted that he had never expected the Demon King to have a daughter. Kane looked at the trembling girl and questioned why she was so frightened. With power like hers, she could easily defeat the soldiers surrounding her. General told Kane not to worry. He revealed a mysterious stone and explained that magic could be channeled into it. The item had been prepared to deal with the girl's extraordinary power. As the magic stone activated, it drew the overflowing magic out of the girl's body. The violent energy rushed into the stone, and the girl cried out in pain as the power was forcefully stripped away. The overwhelming surge finally subsided, and the girl collapsed onto the ground. She repeatedly apologized because she never meant to hurt anyone. Her trembling voice carried nothing but regret as she begged for forgiveness. Kane heard the girl's desperate apologies and learned that she could not control her own power. She pleaded for everything to stop because she only wanted to speak. Kane immediately noticed the collar around the girl's neck. He realized that the strange device was the source of her suffering and demanded to know what that collar was. General explained that the collar was a special device developed by the army. It produced electric shocks, and its power could be adjusted as long as it did not kill the wearer. He insisted that the girl might look like an ordinary child, but she was still a monster. He believed that the best way to discipline a monster was through pain and considered such treatment completely justified. General handed the magic stone to Kane and entrusted both the girl and the stone to him. He believed Kane was surely capable of taking responsibility for them. Kane suddenly struck the captain without the slightest hesitation. The powerful blow sent the man flying through the air and left everyone frozen in complete disbelief. The soldiers stared at Kane in shock and demanded to know what had just happened. They hurried toward the captain and begged him to pull himself together. Their anger quickly flared as they accused Kane of going too far by attacking the captain after already striking the general. He dismissed the furious shouting around him and remarked that weaklings were always the noisiest. The girl slowly lifted her head and looked toward Kane. Kane let out a short snort as the collar snapped apart inside his hand. His silent gesture carried nothing but contempt and satisfaction, while the broken restraint fell away without hesitation. The young girl slowly lifted her face toward Kane as confusion filled her expression. Kane declared that they should enjoy the electricity they cherished for as long as they wished. Kane raised a single finger toward the soldiers and branded them as nothing more than worthless trash. The terrifying spell swept over the mansion with overwhelming force, while every trace of mercy vanished beneath the crushing torrent of destructive power. The violent impact swallowed the battlefield beneath an explosion of magical power, while the soldiers were consumed by the relentless assault. Kane's soldier wore a confident smile as the overwhelming magic continued to erase every trace of resistance before him. The young girl trembled as fear refused to leave her heart while a soldier vanished beneath the crushing attack. The soldiers collapsed across the shattered ground while the destruction finally came to an end. Kane stepped toward the young girl and declared that the next turn belonged to her. The frightened child shrank back with a trembling breath as terror refused to release its grip. Her desperate apology poured out without restraint while she pleaded for mercy and struggled to endure the unbearable suffering. She begged for the pain to end because every moment hurt beyond endurance. The shattered collar fell away from the young girl as the final restraint disappeared. The broken fragments scattered across the ground while the burden that had tormented her finally came to an end. Kane gently assured the young girl that the collar had already been removed. The young girl could only wonder why Kane would ask such a question. Kane questioned back why the young girl did not like that crappy collar either, because such a cruel restraint could never be welcomed. He gently placed his hand upon the young girl and acknowledged that she had endured well for someone so small. He assured the young girl that there was nothing to be afraid of anymore because she was safe. A faint voice finally escaped the young girl as emotion filled her trembling face. The young girl buried herself in Kane's embrace as a loud cry finally escaped her lips. Kane quietly held her close and allowed every tear and every cry to pour out without holding anything back. Kane remained beside the young girl in silence as she sat before him. High healing covered the young girl in gentle light, and a soft breath escaped her lips as the pain slowly faded away. He decided that healing came first. The young girl wondered why nothing hurt anymore. Kane confirmed that no wounds or marks were left and asked whether everything was all right. Kane decided that the bath and food could wait until later. He first asked whether the young girl was really the Demon King's daughter. The girl confessed that she did not know and did not know her mother or father. Kane accepted the answer and understood that a soldier had told her that she was the Demon King's daughter, then Kane quietly acknowledged it. Kane asked whether Fio's name was Fio, and Fio answered that it was actually Filianora. Kane asked where she had been until now, and Fio answered that it had been a place with lots of women. Kane quietly accepted that everyone called the place Shokan. Fio gently revealed that she was picked up there as a baby. Fio continued that she helped the women there every day. Kane silently listened as Fio admitted that one day they called for her. Kane quietly understood that there was still no connection to the Demon King so far. Fio happily remembered that she answered with yes as soon as they called for her. Fio tremblingly revealed that the soldiers took her away and locked her inside a small room. Fio continued that everything happened after that. Kane quietly decided that was enough. Kane gently placed his hand on Fio's head and assured her that there were no soldiers there. Kane promised that even if they came again, he would drive them away. Fio timidly asked whether Fio could ask something. Kane quietly answered with a simple question, asking what Fio wished to ask. Kane heard Fio call him Trash Sage, and could only accept the unexpected title with an awkward smile. Kane gently admitted that Kane was his real name. Fio softly repeated Kane's name. Fio quietly asked whether Kane was truly not going to kill Fio. Kane gently asked why Fio would think such a thing. Fio quietly answered that the soldiers said it. Fio sadly believed that Fio would be killed too because the Trash Sage loved bullying children. Kane could only accept that it was a terrible rumor. Fio softly apologized. Kane gently assured her that Kane was not mad at her. Fio sadly believed that the Demon King did bad things. She believed that she must be bad too because of that. Fio blamed she for everything and believed that everyone hated her. Kane quietly asked whether the soldiers had told her that. Fio softly admitted that they had. Kane gently asked Fio to listen carefully. He revealed that his hometown was burned by the Demon King. He quietly prepared to tell her the truth. Fio could only stare at Kane in silence as every word slowly reached her heart. Everything was consumed by flames because of the Demon King. Kane watched every part of his hometown disappear before his eyes. Kane desperately searched for everyone. Kane called for his father while running through the burning village. Only despair answered Kane. Kane stared at the Demon King and realized that everything happened because of the Demon King. Kane cursed the cruel fate before swearing that Kane would definitely make that bastard pay. Kane gently revealed that he became strong to defeat the Demon King, so no one else would suffer again. Fio quietly apologized. Kane softly asked why she was apologizing. Fio could only look at Kane in confusion. Kane gently reminded Fio that Fio did not burn Kane's village. Kane assured her that she had done nothing wrong even if she really had the Demon King's blood. Fio hesitantly asked whether she could really believe that even though she was the Demon King's daughter. Kane firmly answered that Fio was truly not bad. Kane gently embraced her and assured her that no matter what anyone said, she was not bad. Kane asked Fio to never forget those words. Fio quietly accepted every word. Kane held she close and admitted that Kane was not even sure whether Fio was truly the Demon King's daughter because similar magic could simply be a coincidence. Kane decided that matter could be checked later. He gently offered she some cookies because Fio had to be hungry. She happily admitted that the cookies were delicious. Kane turned his attention toward the collar and quietly decided to search for the truth behind it. He examined the shattered collar and silently studied every broken piece. Kane discovered that the collar contained explosion magic. He realized that when struck by attack magic above a certain level, it would detonate within a radius of about 100 meters. He coldly concluded that they expected Kane to attack Fio and kill both of them. He quietly admitted that the trap was more vicious than expected. Kane turned after sensing her behind him. Fio found Kane looking scary. Kane asked what it was. She admitted Kane looked scary. Kane assured Fio there was nothing to worry about. He dismissed it as nothing. She answered with a soft yeah before calling to him. She held out a cookie toward him. She thought Kane might be hungry. He responded with a quiet sound. He looked at the cookie in surprise. Fio asked whether Kane wanted a cookie as well. Kane suddenly recoiled in surprise when Fio answered that she was not scared. She believed Kane did not do bad things to her. Kane stood frozen as those words echoed inside his heart. Fio was not scared, and that simple answer left Kane speechless. He looked at her with growing disbelief. Kane quietly thought that she was a good girl, and she wondered whether being a good girl was enough. Kane believed there was no way such a good girl could be the Demon King's daughter. Fio was the best girl Kane had ever met. Fio softly repeated that she was a good girl. She happily admitted that it was the first time anyone had ever called her that. A gentle laugh escaped her as a bright smile bloomed across her face. Kane stared at Fio in complete surprise. She smiled, and that single smile left Kane completely stunned. She skipped forward with light steps as cheerful laughter filled the air. Joy overflowed from Fio as laughter continued to echo around the quiet mansion. Meanwhile, a woman silently watched the aftermath from the shadows. Her gaze remained fixed ahead as the report unfolded before her. The soldiers had been annihilated. No fatal injuries had been inflicted on Sage Kane or the Demon King's daughter. The woman quietly repeated that the operation had failed. She ordered the report to be delivered to the general. The cursed Demon King's daughter remained alive. The woman firmly resolved that she would eliminate Fio without fail. Determination filled her heart as that single goal became absolute. She quietly reminded herself that everything would be done for the sake of her clan. She looked upon the sight of Fio laughing beside Kane. The pride of her clan stood above everything else, and that resolve would never waver. A loud scream echoed across the mansion as someone cried out in panic. The delivery girl believed Kane was going to kill her. Kane desperately tried to stop the misunderstanding. Kane insisted that it was only a misunderstanding because Kane only wanted the woman to accept his usual thanks. Kane quietly admitted that the attempt did not work. Since it worked with Fio, Kane thought there might be a chance. Kane soon realized that Fio was simply the special one after all. It had been 10 days since Kane met Fio. At first, Fio had been almost completely bedridden. Thanks to the nurse's care, Fio had recovered enough to walk on her own. Fio had been smiling more often. Kane believed that at this rate she would probably be fully healthy before long. Even so, Kane knew Fio was not completely healed yet. Kane suddenly rushed toward Fio after noticing something was wrong. He anxiously called Fio and asked what had happened. She desperately begged Kane not to come any closer and pleaded for Kane to stop. Kane stood frozen as Fio repeatedly apologized. She could only whisper that she was sorry again and again while Kane looked at Fio in silence. Every time the middle of the night arrived, she suffered nightmares and woke again and again. Kane gently reassured Fio that everything was okay and that there was nothing scary there. He stayed beside Fio until she calmed down and fell back asleep. Kane quietly realized that those nightmares had become less frequent. Even so, emotional scars did not heal easily. Kane bitterly questioned what the title of Demon King's daughter truly meant. Even if that was true, Kane could not understand what Fio had ever done to deserve such suffering. Kane decided that the score would be settled sooner or later. Kane decided that Cordelia had to be contacted first. He believed that matter could be handled in time. He learned that Cordelia was investigating the general's case. He wanted her to investigate Fio as well and decide what should happen next. Kane also hoped that she could find her real parents and return to them. Fio called Kane. Kane turned with surprise. She insisted that staying in bed any longer was impossible because getting up felt necessary. Kane looked surprised when Fio suddenly clung to his arm. She explained that after waking up and not finding him there, she went looking for him until she finally found him. She admitted she was glad to find him. Kane wondered if it was really right for a child to become so attached to someone like him. He realized Fio had become attached to him because she had no one else to rely on. Even so, he believed there were surely many people in this world who would treat her kindly. Before continuing his revenge, Kane decided he needed to help Fio expand her world. Kane accepted that it was finally time to eat. While Fio continued holding onto his arm, Kane asked if there was anything she wanted to eat and promised to make anything for her. Fio hesitated before remembering the yellow food from yesterday. She recalled it was fluffy and delicious. He realized she meant hamburger steak and asked if that was what she wanted to eat as well. Kane noticed Fio did not even know the name hamburger. He explained that hamburger steak was a dish made by shaping minced meat into a patty before grilling it. He asked if she wanted to try it, and she eagerly declared that she would definitely eat it. Kane smiled warmly after seeing her excited reaction. Kane agreed to make hamburger steak right away. Kane fell silent after realizing that making hamburger steak meant going shopping. Fio looked at him with quiet curiosity while she accepted that shopping had become necessary. He remembered that revealing his identity in town would only create another disturbance. He knew the so-called trash sage had already caused enough trouble throughout the town and could not move around freely. He received the food and daily necessities that Cordelia had arranged to be delivered to the house. He learned the next delivery would not arrive for a while. He also realized cooking was impossible without ingredients. He noticed Fio did not have enough clothes or daily necessities either, and understood a trip to town had become unavoidable. He quietly considered the situation. He concluded this might become a good opportunity. Kane reminded himself that Fio could not stay with him forever. He wanted to find Fio's real parents and send her back. He believed Fio needed to grow used to people other than himself. He also wanted to help expand her world. Kane quickly made up his mind. He announced that they were going shopping today and that they were going to town. Fio looked up at him with surprise as the word town echoed in her thoughts. Fio stepped into town for the first time and gazed across the lively streets with endless wonder. The beautiful scenery stretched before her, while a joyful cry escaped her lips. The bustling streets of the town spread before Fio as countless people filled every corner. She looked around in amazement and realized there were so many people everywhere. Kane also discovered the town was far livelier than expected. Fio quietly hid behind Kane while staying close to his side. Kane noticed the change and asked what was wrong. Fio looked at Kane with uneasiness and admitted she might end up using magic again. Kane fell silent for a moment before asking whether the magic came out whenever she became surprised or experienced something similar. Fio quietly admitted that seemed to be the case. She explained that she could not use magic before. She revealed that after the soldiers did terrible things to her, something changed, and she became able to use magic. Kane quietly reflected on Fio's words. Kane realized her ability looked like it had truly awakened. Kane remembered hearing that abilities sometimes awakened when someone's life was in danger. He believed Fio had probably awakened because of that. He gently assured Fio that she did not need to worry. Kane held out his hand and offered the flower to her. Fio accepted it with surprise and let out a small sound as Kane encouraged her to take it. Kane explained that magic was not something to fear. He believed that if Fio used it well, then it could become her greatest weapon. Kane assured her that if she kept practicing, then she would definitely be able to use magic like Kane someday. She became excited and believed that could really happen. He told Fio that today's practice would focus on holding magic back. Kane asked if she could do it. Fio answered that she would try her best. She happily agreed with Kane and accepted the praise with delight. Kane smiled with satisfaction and praised Fio as a good girl. Kane noticed people staring at him. He realized that face was familiar. He feared those people would recognize him as the trash sage who had caused trouble in town. He feared that recognition would create another scene. The people wondered if that face belonged to someone they knew. They believed that face looked exactly the same. Another person wondered if the scene was a kidnapping. Someone even considered calling another person for help. He forced a smile because those people had mistaken him for someone else. He briefly believed everything would be fine. The next instant, he realized the situation was far worse than expected. Kane struggled to find a way to clear that misunderstanding because every choice seemed impossible. Fio watched Kane in confusion. A passerby warned that rushing would only cause a fall. The warm scene between the parent and child continued before Kane could react. The child happily embraced the parent, while gentle laughter filled the air. He watched that scene and immediately realized this was the perfect chance. He asked Fio to lend an ear. He quietly explained that from that moment onward Fio should call Kane Papa. Fio looked at him in confusion because that request sounded strange. Kane quickly urged Theo not to think of it as something weird. Kane explained that his reputation was not good. He warned that if people discovered the truth, they might both be driven out of town. He concluded that for the moment they should pretend to be parent and child. Theo quietly looked at Kane without understanding why he had called. Kane asked whether Theo had been listening. She honestly admitted that nothing had been heard. She softly repeated the word Papa. She carefully tried to remember that new way of calling Kane. He immediately realized that was exactly what had been needed. Theo quietly repeated Papa again and again while trying to become familiar with the new word. Theo suddenly called Papa with bright excitement. Kane froze in surprise because the call came far louder than expected. Theo happily hugged him and celebrated that she finally had a Papa. Kane listened to those joyful words with quiet surprise. The people nearby quietly observed them and felt that the two did not look alike at all. He grew uneasy after hearing those words. He quickly decided they should keep a low profile like this. He decided that the general store should be the first destination. He noticed a pregnant woman nearby. He immediately decided they should help that pregnant woman. Kane urged Theo to come along. She happily agreed while following beside him. 1 hour passed and Theo quietly lowered her head. The bright excitement from earlier had completely faded into silence. He believed helping that woman had been a good deed. Theo quietly listened without showing any agreement. Kane noticed something was wrong and wondered whether she was tired. She denied it. She instead reminded him that after helping that lady he had spoken with many people. He answered with a simple agreement. She sadly explained that everyone became frightened of him. They either ran away or cried after seeing him, even though he tried to help with heavy bags. She believed that was truly sad. He could only stand there in speechless shock after hearing those honest words. Theo asked whether Papa helped people. Kane admitted that seeing people fear him would make her sad. He gently asked whether Theo remembered that the Demon King had destroyed Theo's homeland. Theo quietly admitted that memory had not been forgotten. He remembered that day and admitted that not even one important person could be saved. Because of that painful regret, Kane wished for a future where no one would ever suffer or feel sadness again. He admitted that saving everyone at once was impossible. He believed that continuing to help the people standing before him would someday allow that kindness to reach everyone. Kane revealed that helping people was the reason behind every step he chose to take. Kane admitted that even though helping people was the right thing to do, Kane still ended up frightening them anyway. Theo quietly called Papa while listening to every word. Kane turned toward she after hearing that quiet voice. She firmly declared that she would help too. He paused in surprise after hearing those determined words. He softly repeated the word help because those words caught him completely by surprise. She nodded with certainty and showed no hesitation. She promised to copy Kane and help people just as Kane had helped her. Kane quietly accepted those sincere feelings and gently answered with a simple agreement. Kane listened as she believed that if she helped too, then they would surely become able to help everyone in the world. She believed everyone would understand that Papa was a good person. Theo promised that she would do her best. Kane looked at her without finding words. She became someone far kinder than Kane had ever imagined. Kane gently praised her as a truly good child. He urged Theo to tell Papa first if anything ever happened. She happily promised that it would happen. Kane led Theo to Toradorok's shop because this was the place they needed to visit for shopping. She stepped inside and became amazed because so many things filled the shop. Kane assured her that they would shop for everything she needed here. The shopkeeper welcomed them warmly and prepared to help with anything they needed. The greeting stopped midway because the shopkeeper suddenly recognized Kane. Kane froze after hearing the name Trash Sage Kane Redrum because the words struck him without warning. The shopkeeper admitted that Kane looked familiar because the face was well known. The shopkeeper explained that supplies had been gathered in the royal capital until recently, and that was where Kane had been seen before. Theo watched him with quiet concern. Kane understood the situation. Kane apologized and decided to wait outside for a while instead. Kane placed a bag of money on the counter and entrusted it to the shopkeeper. He asked the shopkeeper to use the money and choose everything that she needed. He reassured Theo that everything would be fine because he would return soon. Theo quietly asked whether Papa was leaving somewhere. Kane entrusted everything else to the shopkeeper before walking outside. The shopkeeper looked at Kane with a gentle smile and admitted that the rumors were only rumors because Kane did not seem like a bad person. Kane could only stare in disbelief because someone had understood the truth with nothing more than a single glance. He struggled to accept it while the shopkeeper simply smiled with quiet certainty. Kane could hardly believe that someone truly understood him. The shopkeeper gently revealed that money told its own story because a single glance at it was enough to understand everything. She happily confessed a deep love for money because the way money was earned could always be seen. She concluded that the money had definitely been earned by helping people and asked whether that was true. Kane awkwardly admitted that it was true, but wondered what kind of strange ability could reveal such a thing. Theo innocently asked whether Big Sister was afraid of Papa. The girl gently answered that Kane seemed like a good person and held no fear toward him. She quietly admitted that Kane was only being judged through spending habits and finances. Kane could only stare in disbelief because the answer sounded far too accurate. She finished preparing everything and assured that the purchase covered everything Theo needed. Kane apologized for causing trouble to the shopkeeper. She warmly answered that it was not a problem at all. She introduced herself as Toka Torodokuro and asked everyone to simply call her Toka. Toko admitted that rumors could never be trusted. She never expected the so-called trash sage to become such a wonderful father. Kane awkwardly admitted that many things had happened. She curiously asked about the rumors. Toka explained that people claimed Kane was strong enough to defeat the Demon King. Toka continued with even stranger stories that claimed Kane kidnapped women and built a harem. Other rumors insisted Kane kidnapped children and ate them at night. Toka concluded that such stories did not describe trash at all because they described a complete monster. She gently reassured Kane that there was no need to worry because Kane was truly a good person. Kane quietly thanked Toka for believing in him. Toka suddenly remembered that Kane was a sage and believed Kane knew a great deal about magic. She asked whether that was true. Kane admitted that the claim was mostly true. She then revealed that something needed Kane to examine. She presented several boxes filled with magic stones and quietly waited for Kane to inspect them. Kane picked up one crystal and recognized it as a beginner fire magic stone. Theo curiously wondered whether it was a magic stone. Kane explained that it was a special stone that sealed magic inside. He continued that anyone could use the magic item because breaking the stone would activate the spell. Toka asked why Kane needed such a large number of magic stones. He explained that the stones would be used to deal with magic wolves. Toka revealed that about a week earlier a merchant caravan had been attacked by around 20 magic wolves. Since that day the damage had never stopped. He asked whether her had requested help from the Adventurers Guild. Toka admitted that no request had been made. She explained that the nearby dungeon had been sealed by ice and adventurers were now arriving to drive away the wolves together with the town youth group because there was no other choice. Kane quietly considered the explanation and realized the amount of magic stones would never be enough. He had only wanted to know whether the supply could solve the problem. Before Kane could continue, someone suddenly called out for Toka from inside the shop. Kane looked toward the rushing mayor as the worried man asked why the hurry. The mayor revealed that something terrible had happened and his voice carried growing fear. Kane turned silent as the mayor revealed that the magic wolves had appeared once again. Toka stiffened beside him while Theo listened in silence. The mayor continued that the town youth group had chased the wolves into the forest. Shock swept across Kane as the meaning of the report struck his heart. The mayor revealed that the demon wolves had appeared once again. He continued that the young men had chased the monsters and rushed into the forest. A chill ran through Kane as the truth settled within his heart. He understood that ordinary people entering the forest without the strength of adventurers were walking toward death. He also knew that the forest was the perfect hunting ground for magic beasts. A strained breath escaped as the danger became painfully clear. Kane immediately declared that the situation was serious and that they needed to hurry and save them. The mayor revealed that the desperate plea was the very reason for coming to the store in search of help. He turned toward Kane with renewed hope while wondering who stood before him. Toka stepped beside Kane and reassured the mayor that there was no need to worry. She declared that Kane was someone worthy of trust. Toka revealed that Kane was incredibly strong. The mayor wondered whether Kane was an adventurer. Kane answered that the truth was close enough because his strength surpassed that of most people. Kane declared that he would enter the forest and rescue the reckless youths who had run inside. Relief spread across the mayor as heartfelt gratitude filled his voice for the hope Kane had given. The mayor quickly urged Toka to accompany him to the town gate. Toka received another request to distribute potions to anyone who had been injured. Toka accepted the task without hesitation while the mayor hurried away. Kane instructed Fio to remain behind. Fio immediately declared that Fio would also come along. Kane turned toward Fio in surprise as the unexpected answer left him speechless. She insisted that she would help as well because Kane was going to rescue people in danger. She believed helping others was the right thing to do and refused to stay behind. Kane gently called Fio by name before leaving. He thanked her for those sincere feelings, but explained that the forest was too dangerous. He asked Fio to wait safely at the shop instead. She reluctantly accepted the request and lowered her head with disappointment. Kane encouraged her to be a good girl and promised to return. Fio quickly called out for Kane to wait, but he had already rushed away without slowing his steps. Kane rushed through the streets with unwavering speed as every passing moment carried greater danger. He activated a searching spell and spread his senses across the forest. His magic swept through the trees until the missing youths finally appeared within his awareness. He discovered that the youths were 2 kilometers away. He realized there was no time to waste and decided that flying would bring him there before the situation grew even worse. Kane unleashed flight magic and descended from the sky with overwhelming speed. The people nearby looked toward Kane in complete confusion. They could not understand what had just appeared before their eyes and could only wonder what they had witnessed. A magic wolf sensed Kane's arrival and lifted its head toward the sudden presence. The youths desperately fought against the pack of magic wolves as the beasts surrounded them from every direction. The youths admitted that victory was impossible without magic stones. Despair slowly spread among them, but they refused to surrender because they believed the mayor would bring help. The youth desperately believed everyone only needed to hold out a little longer. A magic wolf suddenly leaped toward one of the youths from behind. Another youth desperately shouted a warning as the charging beast closed the distance in an instant. Kane descended from the sky with flight magic and struck the charging magic wolf before the fangs could reach the young adventurer. Kane faced the remaining danger without hesitation, and his unwavering expression revealed that protecting them had already become his only priority. The defeated magic wolf flew across the forest and crashed through the trees with unstoppable force. One of them struggled to understand what stood before them as the sight of the wolves left everyone frozen with fear. Kane faced the magic wolves as several frightened people stared in disbelief at the beasts surrounding them. He released body enhancement and charged into battle. He branded the wolves as filthy bastards before launching a fierce attack. The fierce barrage swept through the pack, and every wolf was struck by the overwhelming assault. Kane looked over the fallen magic wolves and accepted that the battle had ended. The people stood in amazement because Kane had defeated so many beasts in a single instant. The rescued villagers bowed with heartfelt gratitude because Kane had saved their lives, and they could never repay such kindness. Kane revealed that the mayor had asked for help and urged everyone not to worry. The young men wondered why Kane had not used fire magic during the battle. Kane revealed that fire remained the best way to drive beasts away and quietly questioned whether the remark had been made in jest. The young man insisted that no mockery had been intended because the thought had never crossed his mind. Kane warned that fire should never be used carelessly in a place like the forest. Kane warned that using fire inside the forest would start a forest fire, and the flames would become dangerously fierce. Kane explained that such destruction would bring suffering to the trees and plants. The stunned villagers silently listened as the warning settled into their hearts. Kane reflected that the young men had finally survived the winter and feared that burning the forest would waste everything. Kane believed such destruction would only bring suffering to the animals. The villagers could only stare in confusion as they listened. He firmly ordered that fire was absolutely forbidden in the forest and demanded that everyone remember those words. He fixed everyone with a serious gaze and declared that the warning had to be taken seriously. Kane sensed that one of the magic wolves had escaped and was already racing toward the town. He realized there was no time to hesitate because the beast had to be caught before disaster struck. He ordered everyone to head toward the town without delay. He turned toward the distant town and urged everyone to leave immediately. He stopped them for a brief moment and cast high healing over the injured people. Warm light restored their wounds, and the villagers gasped in astonishment at the miracle. Kane warned everyone not to push themselves. He reminded everyone that proper rest and plenty of water should mostly fix the injuries. He promised another checkup later if anything still felt wrong. The villagers waved Kane goodbye. The villagers realized Kane had been an unbelievably good person. They admitted people could not truly judge others by appearances. They even reflected that Kane's face had looked scarier than the demon wolves. Fio continued chasing after Kane while the villagers watched in surprise. Toka noticed Fio running after Kane and immediately called for her to stop. She urged Fio to come back at once. Kane had not returned, yet as Fio spread both arms before the demon wolf and refused to move, while Toka stood behind her in alarm. Fio fixed a fierce stare on the demon wolf as fear pressed against her heart, yet her resolve never wavered. Toka looked toward the people and hoped someone could do something, while another voice rejected that desperate hope because the enemy was a demon wolf. The frightened voice urged Fio to run while she refused and held her ground because running away was never an option for her. Fio declared that fear did not exist because she was Papa's girl. The demon wolf bared its fangs before her while Toka trembled behind her. Even so, Fio refused to retreat and protected the place where Kane would return. She remembered that a wish for Papa and Mama had always lived inside her heart. People told her that she was a foundling and that no one knew who her parents were. She had always felt jealous of happy families, yet she believed that one day Papa and Mama would come to bring her home. That dream became the one and only dream that she never abandoned. In the end, her parent never came. Fio kept waiting with a lonely heart, yet no one ever reached out to her. Every day became filled with pain and misery and tears. She was called the Demon King's daughter and was taken to a strange place where suffering became part of every day. At some point, her dream changed. The hope of meeting Papa and Mama disappeared, and the only wish that remained was for those painful days to finally end. When those hellish days finally ended, she found someone she could truly call Papa. Kane granted the dream that had once seemed impossible and became the most precious person in Fio's whole world. She wanted to become strong and kind just like Papa. She believed Papa would never abandon this child. The people who watched could only stare in shock as she stepped forward without hesitation. She believed that she was not the Demon King's daughter. She believed that she was Papa's girl. That belief became the strength that carried her forward without fear. She resolved that she would absolutely save this child. She called the wolf Mr. Wolf and wished for the wolf to be burned to a crisp. Fio rushed forward without hesitation and released the blazing flames toward the demon wolf. The energy struck the demon wolf with overwhelming force. Fio watched the result in silence while Toka stood frozen with disbelief. The people nearby could only stare as they witnessed the power that Fio had unleashed. Fio and the people came into view beneath him as he landed without delay. Kane arrived at the perfect time. Fio happily called Papa as Kane called her. Fio proudly declared that she had beaten the wolf. Kane answered that he had already seen everything. She asked with a bright smile if she had done a great job and if she had been a good girl. Kane decided to find out and called Fio an idiot. She cried out in surprise as Kane knocked her lightly on the head. Kane placed his hand on Fio's head as Fio wondered why. Kane reminded Fio that waiting had been the promise because the situation was dangerous. She understood that helping people was important. Kane explained that doing reckless things was absolutely not acceptable. Kane admitted that if something had happened to her, then Kane would never forgive himself no matter how much regret remained. She quietly called Papa as she listened to every word. Kane admitted that Fio had technically reached the place before the wolf attacked. She praised him for helping people and admitted that he had done a great job. Kane had been watching the whole time and had been ready to step in if necessary. Toka rushed over and called for them. She asked if both of them were hurt. Kane answered that nothing was wrong. He confirmed that there was no sign of any more demon wolves and that the youth group would be back soon. The villagers realized that Kane was the helper Toka had told them about. They thanked Kane and praised Fio as an amazing daughter. They insisted that the kindness had to be repaid somehow. Kane told everyone not to worry about it. He admitted that a little help was needed since the villagers had the manpower. He explained that helping would be more than enough as thanks. Toka wondered what Kane had in mind while the others waited for the answer. Kane prayed so the demon wolves could sleep peacefully. Fio asked what Papa was doing. She wondered why Papa was praying even though the demon wolves had been bad wolves. Kane explained that the demon wolves had attacked the carriage to survive. He reminded her that she also ate eggs and meat. Kane explained that it was the same thing. Fio asked if she had beaten a good wolf. Kane explained that it was not about good or bad. He explained that it was simply what living things needed to do in order to keep living. Kane told Fio that her power was truly incredible. He reminded her to think carefully whenever that power was used. He explained that taking lives without a good reason was the one thing that must never be done. Fio apologized to Mr. Wolf. She promised that the lesson would be remembered and that every word would be considered carefully. Kane quietly stayed beside her as the apology reached the silent grave. Kane silently thought that the display had still been unbelievable. They realized that the lightning magic had carried the force of a mid-tier spell. They admitted that even the elite magic academy in the capital had very few people capable of using such magic. The people reflected that perhaps the story about the Demon King's daughter had never been complete nonsense after all. Kane apologized for dragging the mayor into the situation and asked the mayor to help as well. The mayor answered that there was no need to apologize because this was nothing. Toka quietly watched the exchange while waiting for what would happen next. The mayor admitted that everyone truly owed Kane a great debt this time. The mayor knew those words were rude to a benefactor, but still wished to ask something. Kane listened as the mayor hesitated before continuing. They realized that Kane was the so-called scum sage everyone had been talking about. The mayor carefully addressed Kane. The villagers recognized the name Lord Kane Redrum. The villagers realized that Kane was the scum sage. They remembered the wanted posters received a few days ago. They believed Kane was the one who had recently been banished from the royal capital. They noticed that Kane's face and the scars matched perfectly. Kane realized that lying would only be exposed. He admitted that the rumors were true and confirmed that he was Kane Redrum. The mayor quietly accepted the answer because the truth had already been understood. Fio insisted that Papa was not a bad person. Toka agreed that nothing was like the rumors. Kane gently reassured Fio and Toka that everything was all right. He told the mayor not to worry because he would never come into town again. The mayor answered that the reason was understood. The mayor believed Kane had fled the royal capital with a young child. He could only imagine how difficult Kane's situation had become. Kane looked confused because he had only heard rumors about the great city. The mayor described the royal capital as a true den of monsters and demons. He explained that nobles fought for power every day and every night. He revealed that plots and assassinations were as common as breathing. He concluded that Kane must have been protecting a hidden heir whose life had become the target of countless enemies. The mayor believed Kane had accepted a false crime and escaped the royal capital to protect that child. Kane stood speechless while Fio quietly listened beside Kane. The mayor explained that everything now made sense because that was why Kane had looked like a parent raising a child. He wondered if everyone was seriously saying those words with a straight face. He admitted that people truly called Kane the scum sage. The mayor declared that everyone had watched Kane praying at the wolves' graves. The mayor could not believe that someone who mourned the dead like that could ever be a villain. The villagers chose to believe in Lord Kane. Kane stood silent as those words reached the heart. Fio happily admitted that the reason was still hard to understand, but she knew Papa was a good person now. Kane answered that the result was good. She smiled brightly because all of it had happened thanks to her. Kane realized that without Fio, he would never have come to this town. He understood that no one in this town would have ever understood Kane without her. Fio smiled with innocent happiness while bringing warmth into Kane's heart. He looked at her and believed that maybe she was Kane's very own goddess of good fortune. The villagers happily announced that everyone would hold a feast that night. Everyone declared that the celebration would honor Lord Kane who had saved the town. Cheers rose from every direction while Kane and Fio found themselves surrounded by grateful smiles. Inside the military office of the Grantial Kingdom, Hugel noticed that the long-awaited return had finally come. Hugel remarked that the return had taken an unusually long time. The woman answered with a quiet confirmation. The woman offered an apology because the mission had lasted longer than expected. She explained that the target this time had been the Sage Kane. She revealed that every movement had to be investigated with great care, so Kane would never notice the surveillance. Hugel praised the mission and assigned the woman to the next task. The woman accepted the order without hesitation. After watching the woman leave, Hugel admitted that the woman was as unsociable as ever. The other man remarked that the woman was still an excellent spy. Hugel agreed because he knew the woman very well. He grew frustrated because the Sage Kane had not only ruined the plan, but had also interfered with the slave trading business. Another official admitted that the disturbance at Castle Drawing and Lord Bernstein's curiosity had become a complete disaster. Hugel admitted that he was not the type of person who would simply sit back and accept everything without resistance. He decided to send the Demon King's daughter after Cain. Hugel believed that even the sage Cain would never escape unharmed after facing the Demon King's daughter. He burst into laughter while declaring that Cain would definitely be eliminated. He vowed that Cain should wait because Cain's head would become his prize. The townspeople happily called out to Lord Cain and warmly welcomed Cain with cheerful smiles. A woman thanked Cain for repairing the torn clothes the other day. Another villager thanked him for helping with deliveries. Cain humbly replied that those things were nothing worth mentioning. A woman invited Cain to visit the shop because an extra serving would be prepared. He admitted that taking a child into a bar felt a little questionable. Theo firmly declared that Cain belonged to her and no one could take him away. The nearby woman could only react with quiet surprise. Theo hugged Cain with complete satisfaction while happily clinging to Cain without any intention of letting go. He apologized to Theo and offered sweets in exchange for forgiveness. Theo quickly forgave after receiving the sweets. He thanked her and invited her to thank the woman as well. The woman replied that no apology was needed because sharing good food was already enough. The women watched Cain and Theo together with warm smiles. They admired the sight of a handsome young man beside a little girl and believed they made a wonderful pair. One woman admitted that the feeling in her heart had not fluttered like this since the days of her first love. A villager arrived with fresh food and explained that the gifts were meant to thank Cain for treating the injured back to health the other day. Another villager eagerly added vegetables. More food followed as everyone continued adding one gift after another until Cain could only accept their overflowing kindness. Toka smiled as Toka remarked that Cain had truly become popular throughout the town. Cain admitted that only a week had passed since the demon wolf incident. Cain still could not fully understand how everything had changed so quickly. Toka believed the mayor and the other townspeople deserved the credit because they had shared Cain's deeds with everyone. The mayor proudly told the gathered people that Cain was the savior of the town, and the story continued spreading from place to place. Toka explained that Cain's reputation had spread beyond the town. She revealed that people everywhere had begun speaking about the one who saved the town. Cain asked what Toka meant. Toka revealed that a newspaper reporter had visited the other day and asked many questions about Cain. The reporter wanted to know what kind of person he was. Cain immediately realized that the press had already discovered the place where Cain was hiding. He worried that the situation could bring trouble to the town. Toka reassured Cain that nothing had appeared in the newspaper, even though quite some time had passed since the reporter's visit. She believed everything would be fine. Toka believed the reporter was simply the careful type who always conducted proper research. Cain then remembered Cordelia mentioning that the king kept a personal spy. Cain also remembered that the spy worked directly for the general and quietly accepted that possibility. Cain realized there was no point staying on guard while watching Theo enjoy the meal with such innocent delight. She happily enjoyed every bite and praised the food as delicious. He reminded she that swallowing food before talking was proper manners. Theo obediently continued eating first before speaking. Toka noticed that Theo loved sweet food. Toka happily revealed that new ice cream had just arrived and invited Theo to try some. Theo admired the colorful dessert and praised it for looking beautiful while believing it must be sweet, cold, and delicious. She eagerly asked Cain for permission because she wanted to try the ice cream. Cain agreed on the condition that Theo would brush teeth after returning home. Toka smiled brightly and asked both of them to wait for a short while before preparing the treat. Cain noticed that everyone kept giving Theo tasty food, and she could barely carry everything anymore. She happily admitted that Papa's cookies were still the favorite food of all. Cain quietly repeated the word Papa in thoughts. He remembered that pretending to be her father was only supposed to be an act. Since then she had kept calling Cain with Papa. Cain realized that Theo should be seated down and everything should be explained properly at least once. Cain gently called her because something important needed to be told to her. Cain revealed the truth. Cain admitted that the original plan was to send Theo to another family. Cain explained that the first intention was to find her real parents, or at least a foster family. Cain believed that staying with a scum sage like Cain would only bring harm to her. Theo immediately pleaded that she did not want to go anywhere else and only wanted to stay with Papa. She broke into tears and cried that everyone knew Papa was Theo's only family. She begged Cain not to leave Theo behind and cried out in despair. Kane admitted that the feelings were the same. Fio looked at Kane in confusion while trying to understand those words. He realized that letting Fio go someday had always been the plan. Before he even noticed, Fio had already become someone truly irreplaceable. He wished to keep hearing Fio call Kane Papa. He wished to wake every morning and find Fio sleeping peacefully beside him because that sight always brought comfort. He wished to give Fio as much happiness as possible. He finally understood that those feelings were without doubt the love of a father. Kane gently asked whether Fio would accept Kane as a real father if she was willing. Kane quietly waited for her answer with hope. Fio immediately accepted with all the happiness in the heart. She rushed into Kane's embrace while joy overflowed without restraint. She declared that Papa was her papa and held Kane tightly without wanting to let go. Kane softly expressed gratitude while embracing Fio with warmth. Kane promised that the search for her real parents would never be abandoned. Kane believed that one day both of them would find her real parents together. Fio happily accepted that promise. Kane quietly wondered whether the real parent might be the demon king that he had killed. A few days earlier, Kane received the investigation report about her that had been requested. The report revealed that there was a possibility Fio was truly the demon king's daughter. Kane fell silent after hearing that possibility. Kane asked why that conclusion was reached. Cordelia explained that many monsters had gathered around the facility when Fio awakened magic. Cordelia explained that different species gathering in the same place at the same time was not a normal event. She concluded that such a thing could only happen if someone nearby could freely command monsters. She identified that person as the Demon King. Kane wondered whether the monsters had been drawn to Fio. Cordelia explained that it had most likely happened unconsciously. After Fio came to Kane, the monsters around the facility disappeared. Kane then questioned why the monsters were no longer coming. Kane silently hoped that the reason was simply because Fio had learned how to use that power. Cordelia explained that after the demon wolf incident, Fio learned to control magic. At the same time, monster sightings nearby suddenly stopped. Cordelia concluded that there was still no certainty that Fio was the Demon King's daughter. The report also admitted that there was no proof to deny that possibility. Cordelia ended because that was all it contained. Kane quietly accepted every detail while remaining deep in thought. Kane accepted that Fio might truly be the Demon King's daughter. He also decided that truth no longer mattered. He looked at her happy smile and vowed that no matter what happened, Kane would protect her. Kane also vowed to make absolutely sure she would always be happy. Toka returned with the ice cream that had been ordered and thanked Kane for waiting. Fio happily admired the ice cream with sparkling excitement and declared that this was ice cream. She thanked Toka and Kane. She also wished Kane would enjoy it too. Toka warmly encouraged both of them to take time and enjoy it. He suddenly noticed a presence and quietly turned toward the source. Kane remained silent while carefully watching. She looked at Kane with curiosity while holding the ice cream. Kane opened the door and quietly called for the visitor to come out. Someone hidden behind the door let out a startled cry. Unknown girl entered with nervous steps while facing Kane. Fio recognized Maria as the same girl from before. Toka welcomed Maria with a warm greeting. Maria quietly returned the greeting with a simple hello. Kane asked whether Toka knew Maria. Toka explained that Maria often helped with deliveries. She kindly asked what Maria needed today. Maria hesitated before speaking and quietly gathered the courage to answer. Maria bowed deeply before Fio and thanked Fio for saving Maria before. Fio looked on with surprise and quietly wondered what had happened. Maria also thanked Kane after hearing from everyone in town that Kane had driven away the wolves. He accepted the gratitude and explained that there was no need to worry because Kane had grown used to people running away in fear before. Maria also apologized for running away from Kane that day. Toka suddenly remembered there was something that needed to be asked of Maria. Toka asked where Maria had been trying to go on the day the demon wolf attacked. Maria froze in surprise when the question reached Maria. Silence settled over everyone as Maria struggled to answer. Toka reminded Maria that the delivery that day had only been inside the town. Toka explained that since the demon wolves started appearing, nobody had requested deliveries outside the town. Toka then asked whether that was correct. Maria quietly admitted that it was true. Toka revealed that Maria had been trying to reach the mountain that day. Kane asked what was on the mountain. Maria quietly admitted that the destination had been for medicine ingredients. Maria explained that Maria's mother was sick. She explained that a special medicine for the illness could be found on the mountain beyond the cliffs. She also admitted that the climb was difficult even for an adult, which made the medicine hard to obtain. Kane quietly understood the situation and asked what kind of illness Maria's mother had. Maria revealed that the illness was severe petrification disease. Kane admitted that even Kane could not cure that disease. Theo looked at Kane in surprise and wondered whether even Kane's magic could not heal it. Kane explained that petrification disease was basically a poison. Kane also explained that healing magic which healed wounds and fatigue could not cure it. Maria explained that they were only buying time with medicine that slowed the disease. Maria also gratefully explained that Toka sold the medicine at a very low price. Maria knew that once the petrification reached Maria's mother's heart, her life would come to an end. Maria explained that Maria's father had died years ago. Maria revealed that Maria's mother had raised Maria alone ever since. Maria also explained that after becoming sick, Maria's mother had remained bedridden. Maria's mother always claimed to be fine, even though Maria could see the suffering growing worse every day. Because of that, Maria revealed that Maria wanted to gather the medicine ingredients. Kane decided that the plans for tomorrow were now settled. Theo happily agreed and answered that Kane was right. He looked at Maria with quiet resolve while Theo stood beside Kane and waited for what would happen next. Kane declared that he was going out by himself, while Theo insisted that they were going out together and that Kane was Papa. Kane paused in confusion while Theo also stopped and wondered what was happening. Maria realized that Kane was going to the mountain to look for the medicine ingredients, and the thought left her speechless. Kane believed that helping someone in trouble was only natural and wondered why Maria would question that choice. Theo wanted Maria's mother to get better too, and reminded Kane that the last time had already taught him a lesson. Kane believed bringing Theo along would only create another reckless situation if attention slipped from her. Kane also believed a mountain with few people would become the best chance to witness how Theo used her power. Theo welcomed the decision with bright happiness after Kane finally allowed her to come along. Theo asked them to wait because Maria believed the illness affecting Maria's mother would surely be cured. Maria offered heartfelt thanks to them. Theo accepted the gratitude with joy, while Kane quietly accepted the words. Toka promised to prepare a map for the journey because it would help. Kane accepted the offer because the map would become useful for the search ahead. Toka happily introduced picnic clothes for children and water bottles. She proudly revealed that many really cute ones were available. Kane quietly admitted that she possessed a frightening sense for business. She gently wondered whether Kane truly had no need for those items. Kane reluctantly admitted that buying those items would mean taking everything Toka had prepared. She warmly expressed gratitude for the purchase and sincerely thanked Kane for buying the items. The reporter secretly wondered whether Kane had truly managed to tame the Demon King's daughter. The reporter carefully observed the house while recording every detail in silence. The reporter recalled catching a glimpse inside when the door opened a moment earlier. The sight revealed Sage Kane and the Demon King's daughter together and convinced the reporter that the information was real. The reporter believed that if the spy's report was true, then the situation could become extremely serious. The reporter became determined to see Kane dead and vowed that Sage Kane would soon face the consequences. Hugel believed Kane and the Demon King's daughter should have already destroyed each other by now. The man beside him agreed that it would not have been strange if Kane had at least lost an arm. The other man reflected that relying on the Oni god had crossed his mind once. The listener questioned whether that would truly become the final option. Lord Hugel dismissed the concern because if the Oni god ever discovered the slave trade, the punishment would never be light. The other man admitted that life held value as well. Hugel declared that the report had greater importance and ordered the report to be delivered without delay. Lord Hugel also intended to witness how much destruction had been left behind. The other man laughed softly and regarded Lord Hugel as a truly wicked man. Kane's attendant looked over the report with quiet confidence and decided to examine it in detail. The official waited nearby until Lord Hugel suddenly looked up in confusion after reading the report and failed to understand what had appeared before him. The attendant stared at the report in shock as fear spread across his face, while Lord Hugel demanded to know what had happened. The attendant struggled to speak and respectfully asked permission to deliver the report before revealing that Kane Redrum had. Kane had truly tamed the Demon King's daughter, and the report declared that both were living together peacefully as a beloved good man and his child in the nearby town. Hugel and the attendant stood in heavy silence, while a stunned reaction escaped as neither could accept the truth before them. The investigator revealed that the unbelievable report had been verified after taking the disguise of a reporter and asking the townspeople about Sage Kane. A townsman remembered Kane as the savior who rescued the town. Another person remembered Kane as a tragic hero who had been exiled from the capital under false accusations. Someone else remembered Kane as a loving father who cared deeply for Fio. The investigator heard praise about Kane's good cooking, and even heard that many people would gladly let Kane hold their children, while every answer matched the contents of the report. The investigator struggled to believe that Sage Kane could truly be such a good person. Another thought rejected everything and insisted that Kane was still the scum sage. The lingering suspicion refused to disappear as another possibility formed that keeping the Demon King's daughter beside him had to be part of some hidden scheme. Using the Demon King's daughter, whom Kane had won over, became the perfect tool for revenge against the kingdom that had exiled him. The investigator imagined that hidden plan unfolding beneath the dark shadow of the capital. He remained determined to uncover the truth and became certain that Vice Captain General would expose Kane's real face. The investigator watched Kane and Fio return home together and accepted that certainty had not yet been reached. The desire to know the complete truth only grew stronger.